Hi everyone, I'm Shelley and you're watching There's No Place Like Home. I'm back with another reading from Paradise Found by William F. Warren. And today I'm going to be reading to you Part 4, Chapters 2, 3, and 4. Chapter 2, The Cradle of the Race in Ancient Japanese Thought. According to the most ancient texts, Japan is the center of the earth. W. E. Griffiths. According to the earliest cosmogony of the Japanese, as given in their most ancient book, the Koji Ki, the creators and first inhabitants of our world were a god and goddess, Izanagi and Izanani by name. These, in the beginning, we quote from Sir Edward Reed, standing on the bridge of heaven, pushed down a spear into the green plain of the sea, and stirred it round and round. When they drew it up, the drops which fell from its end consolidated and became an island. The sun-born pair descended on to the island, and planting a spear in the ground, point downwards, built a palace round it, taking that for the central roof pillar. The spear became the axis of the earth, which had been caused to revolve by the stirring round. This island, however, was the Japanese Eden. Here originated the human race. Its name was Onogoro Jima, the island of the congealed drop. Its first roof pillar, as we have seen, was the axis of the earth. Over it was the pivot of the vault of heaven. Mr. Reed, who has no theory on the subject to maintain, says, the island must have been situated as the pole of the earth. In like manner, with no idea of the vast anthropological significance and value of the datum, Mr. Griffiths remarks, the island formed by the congealed drops was once the North Pole, but has since been taken to its present position in the inland sea. Here, then, is the testimony of the most ancient Japanese tradition. Nothing could be more unequivocal. Izanagi's divinely precious spear of jade, like the transverse jade tube of the ancient Shu king, is an imperishable index, not only to the astronomical attainments of prehistoric humanity, but also to humanity's prehistoric abode. In Part 5th, Chapter 4th, further illustration of the Japanese conception of the origin of their race will be given. Chapter 3, The Cradle of the Race in Chinese Thought. The rationalistic genius of the matter-of-fact Chinese is apparent even in the way in which they conceived their primitive history, and in this respect, as in many others, it brings them into nearer relations with the best modern science than belong to the other Oriental races. Samuel Johnson of Salem. It is through this wonderfully pure seer, Lao Tse, as it appears to me, that we ascend to the primitive revelation of truth given to this ancient people. William Henry Channing. Approaching this theme, a reviewer of the Shin Sin Tung Keen, a general account of the gods and genii in 22 volumes, offers the following observations. All nations have some tradition of a paradise, a place of primeval happiness, a state of innocence and delight. The Taoists are by no means behind in referring to an abode of lasting bliss, which, however, still exists on earth. It is called Kuen Lun. In another article by a student of Chinese sources, it is stated, this locality, being the abode of the gods, is paradise. It is round in form, and like Eden, it is the Mount of Assembly. Like the Gan Eden of Genesis, it is described as a garden, with a marvelous tree in the midst, also with a fountain of immortality, from which proceed 4 rivers, which flow in opposite directions toward the 4 quarters of the earth. In the language of the writer first quoted in this chapter, sparkling fountains and purling streams contain the far-famed ambrosia. One may there rest on flowery carpeted swords, listening to the melodious warbling of birds, or feasting upon the delicious fruits, at once fragrant and luscious, which hang from the branches of the luxuriant groves. Whatever there is beautiful in landscape or grand in nature may also be found there in the highest state of perfection. All is charming, all enchanting, and whilst nature smiles, the company of genii delights the ravished visitor. Where now is this Paradise Mountain located? At the North Pole. The sentence before those last quoted reads as follows: Here is the great pillar that sustains the world, no less than 300,000 miles high. This world pillar, or axis of the earth, is sometimes conceived of as slender enough for the use of a climber. Thus we read, one of the Chinese kings, anxious to become acquainted with the delightful spot, set out in search of it. After much wandering, he perceived the immense column spoken of, but trying to ascend it, he found it so slippery that he had to abandon all hopes of gaining his end, and to endeavor by some mountain road, which was rugged in the extreme, to find his way to paradise. When almost fainting with fatigue, some friendly nymphs, who had all the time from an eminence compassionated the weary wanderer, lent him an assisting hand. He arrived there and immediately began to examine the famous spot. Such a pillar connecting the earth with an upper paradise, and affording a means of access thereto, necessarily recalls to mind the analogous conception set forth in the Talmud. There is an upper and a lower paradise, and between them upright is fixed a pillar, and by this they are joined together, and 'tis called the strength of the hill of Sion. And by this pillar on every Sabbath and festival the righteous climb up and feed themselves with a glance of the divine majesty till the end of the Sabbath or festival, when they slide down and return into the lower paradise. In this conception we have a twofold paradise, one celestial and one terrestrial. Among the Chinese we find the same. The upper is situated in the center or pole of heaven, the lower directly under it, at the center or pole of the northern terrestrial hemisphere. The pillar connecting them is, of course, the axis of the heavenly vault. We quote, "Within the seas in the valleys of Kuen-Lun, at the northwest, is Shang-Ti's lower recreation palace. It is 800 le square and 80,000 feet high. In front there are 9 walls, enclosed by a fence of precious stones. At the sides there are 9 doors, through which the light streams, and it is guarded by beasts. Shang-Ti's wife also dwells in this region, immediately over which is Shang-Ti's heavenly palace, which is situated in the center of the heavens, the celestial pole, as his earthly one is in the center of the earth, the terrestrial pole." There can be no mistaking this use of the term center for pole, for the Chinese astronomers expressly state the polar star is the center of heaven. Elsewhere, instead of Kuen-Lun being a world pillar in the valleys, or plain, or mound of the terrestrial paradise, we find it described as a stupendous heaven-sustaining mountain, marking the center, or pole of the earth. The 4 quarters of the earth incline downwards. On this vast plain or mount, surrounded on all sides by the 4 seas, arise the mountains of Kuen-Lun, the highest in the world according to the Chinese geographers. Kuen-Lun is the name of a mountain. It is situated at the northwest, 50,000 le from the Sung Khao Mountains, and is the center of the earth. It is 11,000 le in height, Kang He. The significance of the foregoing as respects the location of paradise cannot be doubtful. But compare further the 6th head under chapter 3rd of part 5th, also chapter 4th of the same part. Chapter 4. The Cradle of the Race in East Aryan or Hindu Thought. The reader cannot have failed to be struck, as the first explorers of Sanskrit literature have been, with the close analogy, we might even say the perfect identity, of all the essential features of the typical description of Mount Meru in the Puranas with the topography of Eden in the 2nd chapter of Genesis. The Garden of Eden, Gan Eden, the Garden of God, which is guarded by the anointed and protecting cherub, is placed like the Garden of Delight of the gods of India, on the summit of a mountain, the holy mountain of God. Lenormand. In what kind of a world lived the ancient Brahmin, and what was his conception of the location of the cradle of the race? One of the oldest of the elaborate geographical treatises of India is the Vishnu Purana. Taking this as a guide, let us place ourselves alongside one of the ancients of the country and look about us. First, we will look to the south, far down the Indian Ocean. What was supposed to lie in that direction? To begin with their distribution of the different quarters of the world among the gods, this is the quarter belonging to Yama, the god of the dead. May he whose hands the thunder wields be in the east thy guard and shield. May Yama's care the south befriend, and Varun's arm the west defend. And let Kuvera, lord of gold, the north with firm protection hold. In precise accordance with our key to ancient cosmology, it is the direction of descent. North is upwards, Uttarat. South is downwards, Adharat. Hence the abode and kingdom of Yama is not only to the south, but also below the level of India, i.e. on the under hemisphere, or, as Monier Williams locates it, in the lower world. All Hindu literature is full of similar references. The exact time required for the soul's journey was supposed to be 4 hours and 40 minutes. In this direction, evidently, we shall vainly seek a paradise. Let us turn to the north and ascend. First, of course, we come to the Himalaya range, the Himavat of Indian geography. All that portion of the earth lying between this mountain range and the great ocean to the south constitutes one of the 7 or 9 varshas, or divisions, of the habitable upper hemisphere. Its name is Bharata. If now our ancient Hindu could proceed due north and cross the Himavat, which he does not think possible to mortals, he would find himself in Kimpurusha, an equally extensive but more elevated and beautiful Varsha, extending northward till bounded by a second range of incredibly lofty mountains, the Himakuta. Still ascending, or going north, until he had crossed this division and passed the Himakuta, he would enter Harivarsha, a still loftier and diviner country. This extends in turn to another boundary range, to the Nishada, crossing which one would come to Ilavrita, the central Varsha of all, which occupies the top as well as the center of the world. To the adequate description of the beauty and glory and preciousness of this country no tongue is equal. In its center is situated the Mount of Gods, beautiful Meru, described in chapter 1 of the present part. It is at the pole, and around it revolve all constellations of heaven. It is the center of the habitable world. Continuing our imaginary journey across this divine country of Ilavrita, crossing, of course, this colossal central mountain, we should now begin to descend on the meridian opposite to that which we ascended on the India side of the globe. The boundary of the central region on that side is the Nila range. Then comes the Varsha of Ramyaka. Its farther boundary is the Sweta range, beyond which is the Varsha of Hiranmaya. Still descending, we cross this and the range which bounds it on the farther side, the Srinjan, and we are in Uttarukaru, the last of the 7 grand divisions of the earth, the one corresponding in distance from Meru to Bharata, or our starting point. It, of course, is on the equatorial ocean, and here too we have only to cross this ocean in order to reach the underworld. The way in which the Varshas are made to number 9 is by subdividing the great central cross-section of the hemispherical surface, leaving Ilavrita in a perfect square on the top of the globe, the land descending eastward to the sea being called Bhadrasva, and the corresponding country to the west being called Ketumala. To assist the reader to a clearer conception of this sacred geography, we give herewith 2 cuts, one of which presents an outline, the side aspect of the Puranic earth, and the other a flat polocentric projection of its upper hemisphere. Having now answered our first question and showed in what kind of a world the ancient Hindus lived, we pass to the second. What was his conception of the location of the cradle of the race? The question is answered the moment we say that in the Hindu conception and tradition, man proceeded from Meru. His Eden land was Ilavrita. It was therefore at the pole. The earth of the Hindus viewed from above. Utakaru, Hiranmaya, Ramyaka, Sumeru in Ilavrita, Harivarsha, Kimpurusha, Bharata or India, Ketumala, Bhadrasva. How strange that Lenormand could have written the following and still have imagined that the true primeval Eden of the Hindu was anywhere else than at the terrestrial pole. He says, in all the legends of India, the origin of mankind is placed on Mount Meru, the residence of the gods, a column which unites the sky to the earth. At first sight, on reading the description of Mount Meru furnished by the Puranas, it appears overcharged with so many purely mythological features that one hesitates to believe that it has any basis in reality. To realize these descriptions, one must represent oneself in the center of a vast level and very elevated surface, surrounded by various mountain ranges, a gigantic block, the axis of the world, raising its head to the highest point of the heavens, whence there falls upon its summit, on the North Pole, the divine Ganga, the source of all rivers, which there discharges itself into an ideal lake, the Manasa Sarovara. Meru, then, is at one and the same the highest part of the terrestrial world and the central part of the visible heaven, the two having been confounded through ignorance of the real constitution of the universe. It is also, at one and the same time, the North Pole and the center of the habitable earth, Jambudvipa, literally of the continent of the tree, Jambu, the tree of life. The earth of the Hindus. Sorry, this was the earth of the Hindus, the side view of the upper hemisphere. Leaving the higher basin of the mountain in which its waters have at first collected the source, Ganga travels 7 times round the Meru in descending from the abode of the 7 rishis of the Great Bear, to empty itself afterward into 4 lakes placed on 4 summits adjacent to this vast pyramid, and serving as buttresses on its 4 sides. Fed by the waters of the celestial Ganga, the 4 lakes in their turn feed 4 terrestrial rivers, which flow out through the mouths of 4 symbolical animals. These 4 great rivers water as many distinct regions, and discharge themselves into 4 opposite seas, to the east, south, west, and north of the central Meru. The 4 lakes, the 4 rivers, and the 4 oceans are composed of different liquids, corresponding to the 4 castes, and these latter, with which are connected all the nations of the human race, are reputed to have set out from the 4 sides of Meru to people the whole earth. A similar illustration of the power of a wrong prepossession is given us in the illustrious Carl Ritter, who, after expressly declaring that the numberless Puranas and their most diverse interpretations by the pundits teach that Meru is the middle of the earth, and itself literally designates its center and axis, thereupon in the coolest manner imaginable proceeds to identify the same sacred height with the mountains of Central Asia. Still worse is the procedure of Mr. Massey, who, after locating the Garden of Eden on Mount Meru and saying explicitly the pole or polar region is Meru, and again Meru is the garden of the tree of life, nevertheless tells us that in equatorial Africa beasts first grew into men. Happier is the inconsistency of Mr. Lilly, who, despite his adhesion to the flat earth theory of Hindu cosmology, still incidentally speaks of the blissful garden as at the pole. That is all of the reading for today. I'm hoping to get another reading done next week, but I hope that you enjoyed this. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed and would like to hear more of what I have to say, I would love if you would do that. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave one either here or over on Instagram. And if you like my work and would like to support my page, I will leave a link in the description to my channel membership, or you can just click on it right on my channel page. And I hope you have a great day.